All right. Okie dokie. All right, so let's take a look at using all these techniques that we've gone through, and let's look at how to implement the middle tier and also the front end based on what we know so far. Right. All right. So this assumes that you've already have a Java server, which we have from the previous assignment. And that you have a database, and you certainly have that already, right? And presumably you already have a React client, which you should, right, by now. So this assumes that you have all that. Also, some of the names here are generic names on the names of the projects. Obviously, use your names, right? Your username as opposed to my username, and this semester as opposed to previous semester. Okay, so please go over this, but with your own values. Also, this very first part walks you through setting up Spring Boot, which I assume you already have. So I'm going to skip over that part, and I'm going to jump right into the course middle tier. Right. We already had worked on the middle tier for users, right? Being able to create users. We're going to need something similar for the middle tier for the courses. We will need a Java class that represents the course, right? That will have, at a minimum, it will have an ID, right, for the primary key, and then it will have a couple of fields such as the title, the date that it was created, and the date that it was modified. Yes? Right. We also are going to need a repository, a CRUD repository that's going to be able to create, update, delete, find all those functions, right? So that's easy, right? We're also going to need a service, right, that is going to create a RESTful service that's going to allow us to post new courses, find all courses, find a particular course, delete a course, right, what else? Those are the CRUD operations, okay, or modify an existing course. So we'll create a REST controller to do that, right? It's very, very similar to the REST controller that we built for the users. Yes? To just get us started, here's an API course that retrieves all the courses. Right? Now we don't have any courses just yet, but that's okay. What we're going to do is that we're going to make sure that we restart the Spring Boot application. It's going to create a brand new table for us, and with that table, we're going to manually insert a couple of courses. Just to test that it's up and running, right? And it's returning some JSON data. And when we hit that API, hopefully it returns this array of courses. Yes? Right. So these 5-6 slides should get you up and running with at least some data to consume from the server side. Right? From what you've done in the previous assignment. This should be identical to that skill. So you have this skill already, right? So I'm not going to linger too long there. For the course list on the React side, you're going to have to implement a course list React client. Meaning, right now we have a hard-coded list or a card of courses. Instead, what we'd like to be able to do is go and fetch those courses from the server. Right, go out to the server, it's going to come back as a JSON object, and I want to render it. Yes? So to do that, we create a React client, which we already have. You don't have to do this, right? We have a starting point as a whiteboard application. We already have done this. We already have that. We start from scratch. We threw everything away. We have a whiteboard component. Notice what we're gonna follow a file naming and also a file structure that we're going to follow throughout the time we play around with React. For instance, whiteboard is going to be a component that is going to contain many other components, right? And it's going to provide the state information for all its children components, right? So components that typically do this kind of task of containing others and having overall state, they're usually referred to as containers, right? Like the name suggests, they contain other things, right? They keep track of other things. So this whiteboard component that we have here, which I think we have on the index, right? Our index, this whiteboard component that we have somewhere here. I thought we did. Yeah, there's whiteboard. It's going to be in its own file, right? In a file called whiteboard.js. Right, under a directory called containers. Yes? Right? And I'll do this, and then I'll provide it as in GitHub. All right, let's see, what else? We're going to render the whiteboard. We already have that. We're going to deploy into Heroku. All right, so the very first part is we're going to implement the course lists, which right now is hard-coded. Ours is just static. Right, it's just displaying 5 or 6 cards. Right? Instead, we want these to be dynamic. So first of all, we'll create a course list that has its own constructor. It renders just plain old course list. Right? We can do that. We can grab this and we can get started here. We can under a directory called containers. We can create a new file and call it course list.js, and in here we can paste that. There it is, right? We have a component, and we're exporting it. So from within our index file, instead of using this course card, right, we can load our course list. Say import. Course, it's under where? Yeah, course lists from, and it's right now it's under containers and then course lists, right? And here in whiteboard, instead of having these hard-coded list of course cards, instead we can just load our course list, right? And here, to navigate to it, perhaps we can create a route. We can say, hey, how about we add a new route called whiteboard. And this is whiteboard. And create a route that if we click on whiteboard, we load our whiteboard component. Right? So there's our whiteboard component, whiteboard. So if I click on whiteboard, it loads the component that we had earlier, right? That's all this stuff that we had earlier. And down below, notice that there's our course list, right? Which right now is just that dummy content, right? Let's move that course list, instead of being way down below. Let's move it to the top. And probably we don't want this now, right? So right now we just have course lists. Excellent. So if we continue, the course list, there we are. We have course list. Right now we want it to be as a table. So let's render the course list as this div instead of just being that hard-coded empty here, right? So let's replace it with this so that it renders as a table. Perhaps we can paint it as a class name table. There it is. So it looks a little better, right? And now these rows, we're going to have lots of these rows, right? One row per course, or render it as a stack of cards. So that row, this row itself could be a component itself, right? That just has many columns. So let's do that. Let's create a separate course row. Let's have a separate course so that it just renders as a row. Right, so let's grab that, and let's create under containers. Let's create a brand new course row.js. Right, and in here let's paste that content. So now our course list, instead of rendering this hard-coded row for course row, instead we can load here and import our brand new course row from the same directory, course row. There it is. Right, so that we can just render several of these course rows down here. Course row. We can render a whole bunch of these, right? Why did it not load? There we go. We have a whole bunch of course rows in there. Yes? Right? All right, so now that we have the course row, we actually want to be able to retrieve this from the server, right? So to do that, we need something like we used in jQuery. We created a separate class or separate function that hosted all interaction with the server. Right? We want a class to do that. So, but in this case, we're gonna have a class that does that. Right? We're gonna have a class that has all our functions, but we're going to enforce the fact that there should be only one instance of these things, right? A singleton pattern, right? Where if we instantiate it, we never want to instantiate it ever again. So to do that, I'm just going to copy this, and I'll go over it a bit in a minute. I'm going to put it in a separate directory called services. In services, we're going to have all the services we need: the core services, the module, the topics, the lessons, everything that we would need to retrieve from the server. To start off, we'll just create the course service, course service.js, and we'll paste that in there. I'm not going to go into it just yet, right? But this make sure that there's only one of these instances hanging around. The more interesting part of this is that internally, we're going to have a function called find all courses. Okay, and this find all courses is going to do what? It's going to use a fetch, yes, to go out to the server and fetch an array of courses, right? Very much like we did in jQuery, right? We went out to the fetch, responded we parsed it as a JSON, and then internally we rendered it, right? So internally we're going to declare a course API. So we'll declare it up here. Now why are you complaining? Is new line? Oh. Not sure. I think it's a new line const. Oh, I think maybe no constants there. Sorry, no constants there. Your URL certainly will be different than mine, right? So please use your particular URL, right? And your find courses. Let's load that. Let's implement that, and let's declare it here. Okay. So what this is doing is just doing what? It's doing a fetch. It's returning a promise that contains the JSON objects of the array of courses, right, that presumably are in the database that we insert manually, right? From within your component, you can associate an instance tied to the course service, right? You can load your course service. Right, you can import it from your course list. From your course list, you can import the service right there. Oops, copy. Right, there's our course service we just wrote right here, and then from the constructor, then bind to a local instance, bind the course service to a local instance, and then set an initial state, meaning I'm going to start with an empty array of courses to start off with, and then I'm going to use so React. Each component has what are called life cycle events, right? When they're instantiated, when they're about to be rendered, when they're about to be unloaded, right? We're going to be removed from the DOM, or they're going to be added to the DOM. So as the component goes through this life cycle of being instantiated, then added to the DOM, then removed from the DOM, the API calls at you and says, hey, you're about to be rendered, or you're about to be removed. Very much like in C or Java, you have a life cycle, also constructors and destructors, right? It notifies you saying, hey, you're about to be destroyed. Do you want to do something right before destroying? Maybe you want to close some pointers. Maybe you want to clean up after yourself. Deallocate memory space or whatever. Right? So same thing. Right? The infrastructure invokes these life cycle functions to notify you where are you in the life cycle. Right? So component mount is, hey, you're about to be rendered. Right? What do you want to do? And so one of the things that we might want to do is, hey, I'm going to go out to the database, to the server, and fetch the list of courses, right? And I'm going to set them up. So what we're going to do is that in the component mount right here, you're going to say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out to my service. I'm going to use my find all courses. That's going to return a promise, yes? And that promise, presumably, it'll be just courses, right? All already unwrapped from the body, right? Already parsed as JSON, right? And I'm passing along, and I'm going to update the state of the courses, right? I started with an empty array. I'm going to update the state. Instead of being an empty array, it'll be presumably, hopefully, the array of courses that were from the server, okay? And then internally, we're going to need to do what? We're going to need to have to iterate over this, right? We're going to have to iterate over this so that instead of, what's this? Expecting new line. So instead of having course row, what we'd like to be able to do is iterate over this. So it'll be something like, it'll be something like this dot state dot courses dot map, right? Remember that? We just used map earlier. Right? We're going to iterate over the array of courses. Each object in there is a course, of which I'm going to then return a course row. A course row. Well, for now it's just a course row. And ideally, what it would do is that we would pass the actual course object down to the course row, because the course has lots and lots of attributes, right? It has a title, the date that it was created, when it was updated, a whole bunch of other things that we would like to pass down. We can pass the entire object down to the course row, and then the course row can then render perhaps. Can render here this dot props. The property is called course. The property is called course, and the values are whatever's inside of that object, right? So this might be course dot title, right? Plus all the other things that might be in there. How many seats the course has, when there was the start date. When it was modified, whatever, right, would be part of that. Last modified. Make sense? All right. I'll finish this up, and I'll push it to my Heroku, and also to my GitHub, right, so that you can reuse what we've done today. Okay. Awesome.